The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Hey, Friday.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Good evening, all.
Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
I hope you're having a capital morning.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. Cryptocurrencies head for a winning week. Bitcoin tops $30,000 on ETF Optimism and the flight to safety. Dan Eve, the prices are up and suddenly everyone looks like a genius again. What's going on with the price of Bitcoin?
Well, it's doing the usual roller coaster, right? It goes up, it goes down. Obviously, there was the Cointelegraph spike last week where they said that the ETF was going to be approved or had been approved or something like that, allegedly, reportedly, however they edited it to. And since then, obviously, there's been some quite good news about how the even though that news was incorrect, it's looking very likely these spot ETFs will get approved. And there's a lot of feedback that's being given, to the ETFs, and they've reapplied and adjusted their applications. So this is all kind of seemingly good news towards the ETF, depending on if you want an ETF or not. I think an ETF is kind of good because it means that I've got pension money that's sat in silly stocks, and I can shift it into Bitcoin related funds once that happens. So that's going to be beneficial to me, hopefully, and maybe to other people as well who can't. Who've got this money, they don't have money to hand, but they've got something in their pension that they want to be able to invest. And although, it's not your keys, not your coins, at the end of the day, I can't take my pension out and put my pension into Bitcoin, but and hold it myself, but at least I can have a third party do it. And there's risk there, but at least I'm not in dodgy old school stocks like yesterday's tech. I don't need those bits of papers. So ultimately it's looking like they are going to be approved, and probably quite soon as well.
Victoria Jones, the price of Bitcoin is back up. Is it all ETF optimism?
Well, I'm going to be very controversial and disagree with Dan. I think in the article that you posted, it actually said that the trial that was scheduled for April has actually been cancelled, and so this means that the SEC can still appeal the original ruling. So that's part of the small print that often gets overlooked in the hype of these things. And I've done a number of talks recently where one of the main questions has been about the ETF, and one of the things I point out in my talk is that there've been quite prominent economists I've seen on American television for pointing out that something like a Bitcoin ETF has the potential to kind of bring down the entire financial system. So I don't know. I think all of this talk about the ETF could be very premature. I think, they're whipping people into a frenzy only to disappoint them at the last minute. So I'm very skeptical. I think if the price is going up, I think it's more to do with the fact that with all these wars going on and the US government trying to find a new speaker, people are just anticipating that money printer go burr is just around the corner. I think that's a much more likely reason for Bitcoin price starting to take off. So yeah, that's my personal opinion. And I think I've even said on this program, I really don't understand why everyone gets so excited about the ETFs. I mean, again, I was talking to someone yesterday who was making the point about their pension, and I said, yeah, but if the financial system breaks down, you put all your money into a Bitcoin pension rather than using that money to keep it offline, then you lose it. So it's a tricky one. You really have to be very aware of what's really going on before you're making those sorts of decisions. So sorry, Dan.
Josh Shigala, we talk about ETFs all the time, and now it's allegedly making the price go up. Is it finally ETF time?
Well, the thing is that a lot of people, humans in general, they love to grab onto something. Like in the camera space, it was megapixels. Like, oh, the megapixels. it was this number that the salespeople could talk about, and everyone would be, apart from the fact that cameras had all sorts of other things going on that made the image better, the megapixel was the thing. And I think this is similar in crypto, where everyone, the ETF, that's the thing. Will it go through? Will it not? That's the thing that will bring Bitcoin higher, or crypto as general. But the fact of the matter is, we have the Fed in a $110 billion hole. It's literally, it's one of these institutions that is losing money even though they've got a money printer. Like, how can you possibly, like, you actually have to work hard to achieve that. And so there's a whole bunch of things going on that Bitcoin and crypto, well, Bitcoin specifically, was designed for, and that was as a way, as an alternative mechanism, as an exit door to the legacy system, to be able to have an alternative choice in the face of adversity. And this is what we're seeing now play out. And a lot of people got to remember that sometimes the face of adversity doesn't look like true adversity. Maybe it's just perception of massive adversity, and that's what drives people. But right now we're seeing true, the wars around the world, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's in Israel and against Hamas, we have a whole bunch of negative news. On top of that, we've got Larry Fink saying, flight to safety is a thing in crypto, backing up that narrative, so that people get reminded, it's not just gold now. We do have alternatives to not only gold, but to that. So there's a whole bunch of things at play here. It's not just the sales point ETF. And while that makes a good headline, it simplifies the complexities of the human condition right now.
Excellent, Josh. Moving on, predicting the price against the magical Bitcoin predictor ball, the source of all truth and knowledge in our universe. Dan Eve, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
I think we're going higher. We're on a little mini bull run. But one thing I will say is, as Josh said about holding on to a number, one number that is important in Bitcoin is the exahash rate. The hash rate, which is in the exahashes now. And when the Bitcoin peaked price peaked in was it December 2021? The hash rate then was 196 exahashes, and now it is 400, and it's been higher. It's been like 469. So that's double the hash rate of when Bitcoin was at its all-time high, and it's probably just a little bit under half of the all-time high right now. So that's something that keeps on moving strength to strength. All the FUD you see about mining and all the crap you hear in the news about how it's environmentally bad, even though that's swinging around right now, one thing is for sure, and that is that the hash rate is increasing, very steadily on a nice little upward trend.
And as Max Kaiser always said, the price follows the hash rate. Victoria Jones, higher or lower?
Yeah, I think it'll be higher. It's looking a bit healthy at the moment.
Josh Ligala, the good times just keep on coming. Oh, he's muted though.
That was me pumping.
He's pumping it up. Remember last week we asked the 8-ball and it wouldn't answer. So we're going to go ahead and ask this week. Be careful, shaking the magic 8-ball can cause bubbles. Could be a problem in the market. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Concentrate and ask again. Concentrate and ask again. You can't always get the knowledge that you want from the magic 8-ball. Moving on to issue 2. Breaking. SEC approves iShares Bitcoin spot ETF. And originally, it didn't say reportedly. Cointelegraph broke news and broke the Bitcoin market this week, causing the price that you can see in the top of this post. The green candle goes up and the red candle goes down. As Pete Rizzo, famous editor of Coindesk and worker of Kraken, said, career ending. And CTO Larson said, reportedly, Ha 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 ha. Yes, Cointelegraph had some trouble reporting the news this week. As they said on their Twitter account, we had an unfortunate incident where an intern falsely tweeted iShares Bitcoin ETF approval by SEC. I wish I had the button, but it should go ha 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 ha. Pretty close. We have investigated and fired the intern and deducted 6 months of wages from his company linked bank account. I'm not sure you could do that. He was
like what?
I know what. When did you get these powers? He was tipped off by a known scammer. Well, So obviously someone made a lot of money on the price going up, all the shorts being liquidated, the price going down. And as the editor-in-chief said in Dubai, Christina Lucrezia, with Mario Nafal, saying that the false Bitcoin ETF story they posted this morning was not a problem with journalism, but a problem with society. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the Cointelegraph false Bitcoin ETF story that caused the price to rise like crazy and their reputation to fall?
Well, I mean, I do feel sorry for the poor intern. I mean, clearly the scapegoat. I mean, for heaven's sake, if his role is that critical, who on earth's putting an intern on their Twitter feed in the first place? I mean, of course, it's got the potential to, create a problem. It sounds like a really lame excuse, to be honest. And then the prospect of them taking 6 months' salary out of bank account. I mean, what? Who's heard of that? So,
and why aren't they paying him in crypto? Or her?
Sorry, just to add really quickly, that's a joke account, right? That's from @PoetBra. It's not Cointelegraph.
Okay. Oh, geez, we fell into the same trap.
But it's so good.
Yeah, that's it. They don't have the gold tick, right, or the blue tick, or whichever one it is. PoetBra.
Oh well, it's still funny though.
PoetBra. Yeah.
Our bad.
Fair enough. So that's why it sounds completely ridiculous. Yeah, but even so, the editor-in-chief actually being in Dubai and saying nothing to do with me, it's all to do with society. It's just like, oh my God, if you're if this is your job. And I mean, honestly, one of the problems with society is people like you running companies and failing to take responsibility when you've actually done something wrong. I mean, I don't know, boggles my mind, really. I mean, so lame. And in fact, on the tweet, you can actually see the guy in the background with his head in his hands kind of going, I don't think it's going to be the intern that's sacked. It's going to be the editor-in-chief. So, yeah, you see that guy behind kind of going, what is she saying? We'll be having words about that next week.
Absolutely.
Good spotting.
Even without the joke tweet, it's still an incredible story they allowed this to happen, and shows how much power even a tabloid like Cointelegraph has in the industry, where this story, it's approved, gets picked up and picked up and picked up, and actually causes people to change what they're doing with their money, buying into Bitcoin, crushing a bunch of people that were shorting the market, and then having it change just a few minutes later. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the Cointelegraph false ETF story?
Yeah, this is spot on. You tipped off exactly how the angle that I was taking on this is that you have bots now listening to the sentiment of articles being written, and with a reach that Cointelegraph has, you get very, very fast actions from the market, depending on, because they have a high clout, right? So it's extremely dangerous. And if you add on top of that the fact that people mainly read headlines and retweet headlines rather than, and you even get the feature that Twitter has that says, are you sure you don't want to read the article before retweeting this? These are all little things that go towards hopefully fixing this stuff. But like we just suffered from it then, as an example. We read a thing, it was and we reposted, had our opinion about it, and this was just to highlight how fallible journalism is, because especially now, it all started when CNN first came out, and now we have a 24-hour news cycle. So news has to work really hard to get content, and then not only just fill the content, but have people clicking and viewing on that. And obviously we all know about clickbait. We all know about that sort of thing. So as much as we can get that clickbait, the better. Now, that's just one side. That's the business of media. On the second side of that, you have greed and human corruption. So I don't want to say that Peter Schiff is a corrupt, this is a corruption thing. It's just he's playing the market when he says, Bitcoin bad, knowing that his reach forces the price in a certain direction depending on his sentiment. And then other people will react to that, and he can take advantage of that because he knows. So if you mix those two, when you have reach and influence and mix greed or whatever with that, you can definitely make some good coinage. And so I'm always a bit suspect with these sorts of things, because it's very easy if you have reach to be shorting the market or going long, doing something and quickly manipulating the price. So yeah, that's my take on it. It might just be a mistake by this publication, but yeah, I'm always a bit skeptical about it. It could just be, we need more eyeballs, we need hype. This is what gets eyeballs. It could be greed. It could be neither. It could have been a legitimate mistake.
Well, it's always been very difficult to tie down where Cointelegraph comes from. Coindesk is a publicly owned company. They're owned by Digital Currency Group. Bitcoin Magazine, although started by members of BitPay and Vitalik Buterin, was sold to that group out of Tennessee, Bitcoin Media. They own a lot of other Bitcoin media. They own the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, which they purchased. They do another magazine for conferences. They do the popular conference circuit. But Cointelegraph, no one knows who owns Cointelegraph. In fact, I don't think you're even allowed to ask. Originally, when they came onto the scene, famously, their quote-unquote editor was Tony Lane, who was quite a character in the crypto industry until she unfortunately passed away far too young, but did seem a bit like a beard or a mask for the company.
Yeah, and then Victoria Jones.
Victoria Jones is right here.
Not Victoria Jones. What's her name? Sorry, Tony Victoria. Oh God, it is early in the morning.
Still Tony Lane. I don't know any other ones of Cointelegraph.
Yeah. All right.
But there was a big deal where they had a whole scandal of if she was really the editor and if anyone really listened to her and if she was a figurehead, and all of that was kind of worked out in the public square. Now we have this new quote unquote editor-in-chief of Cointelegraph, Christina Lucrezia, who says that the ETF story was not a problem with journalism, but a problem with society. I'm not even really sure what she's talking about here, with the exception of that Cointelegraph was a news organization and they published news, and everyone got really excited about the news, retweeting it, sharing it, making investment decisions based upon it, and so forth, which seems to be all problems with Cointelegraph and their reporting. Nothing wrong with society or journalism, unless they were tricked by some source, and then presumably they should out the source and give us the information. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the exciting Cointelegraph story? Although, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it was posted by an intern.
Yeah, so the background I read on that is that there was a Telegram group where some Cointelegraph editors are in or something like that, and some Pepe meme, like literally Pepe the Frog meme dude was like, yeah, the ETF's going to be approved, and they were like, score, and just posted it without sort of checking. But that really is a cop out from the editor in chief, right? To say, oh, it's society's fault. That's pretty disgraceful. I think the excuse was well, you know, it's the pressure on us, or, you know, paraphrasing, the pressure on us to get the article out there first. If you don't get it out there first, you know, you're second or third or whatever. But the point of news is that it's got to be correct. Right, you need to be a good, reliable news source. Otherwise, you're just, you know, the boy who cried wolf. and no one's going to believe you and read your stories at the end of the day if you can keep on providing terrible like fake news or don't check your sources. And we've seen a lot of that obviously recently with all the stuff that's going on in both the wars. And it seems to be getting worse rather than better. Maybe it is because the fact that there's I don't know, it's easy to tweet something, whereas when there's a proper editorial process where people have to review articles thoroughly before they get printed for the next day, there's a lot more of a thought process that goes behind it, whereas now it takes seconds to tweet something out that can change the world in terms of the financial markets. But I don't think this is isolated to just Cointelegraph and crypto. Their reach is about 1.9 million on Twitter. On CNN's, for example, is 66 million. So the same could happen if they were a slapdash in bringing out, especially say bad news, which moves markets a bit more than good news tends to. And in fact, but actually going back on Cointelegraph, I've still got a gripe, because in June 2017 they had a recent bunch of articles along with Crypto Coins News that KNC miners were bringing out a new miner, and I lost basically a bunch of Bitcoin because I checked about 5 different news sources. Whoever this was coordinated the attack quite well. They all published the thing saying go to KNC site like now, blah 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 blah. It was all on Twitter. I've stamped the tweets and all that. And yeah, essentially it was a completely fake outfit. They didn't do any due diligence on the company. It was all utter crap, and I lost a bunch of Bitcoin, and it was very soul destroying. But yeah, I learned my lesson to check sources, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that level of critical thinking first. They'll like and share, which is, as Josh mentioned, why they've recently introduced that button. Like, are you going to share this news article? You haven't even read it. Like, come on, like the amount of people that probably do that. I'd love to see if they've got stats on that. Like, 97% of these people didn't even click on the article, they just shared it. It's the same thing with like people that write complaints and they get about TV programs, and then someone interviews them and they say, what don't you like about it? And they go, well, I haven't seen it, but so and so said it was bad. And like, well, why are you complaining then? Like, you have to do your own research and come up with that critical thinking yourself. So it's a shame, but it's going to happen until the reins are pulled in. It's probably not done the reputation of cryptocurrency a very good job, because it shows that markets can move so quickly. But the good thing is that come out of this will be that the reins might be tightened internally on these news outfits before they go and publish crazy ass news and then blame it on society. Wibble wobble. Sorry.
It is interesting, Dan, the way you said like that articles can move from web page to web page, and it's really the same article, but it looks like 5 different articles. It has a different headline. Maybe someone writes, I read in Cointelegraph, and then they just regurgitate the same article. We've seen that even recently in the news, where a very, very famous legal case is now all about the former president. He doxed one of the people in the trial on his Truth Social website, which was then reposted to his Donald J. Trump website, which they completely forgot about and left up for 2 weeks, which is a disaster for them because they've essentially doxed this person much longer and ignored a judge's order to delete the evidence. But when you have things that post and repost, as I'm sure Cointelegraph does, or it just happens because of their ecosystem, news like this that was in a chat room 5 minutes ago can just be reposted. And of course, people are making their investment decisions based upon this news. If they want it, like Josh is saying, they're racing to be first. While Cointelegraph wants to publish the article first, other people want to be the first with the news to invest, to buy, to sell, and so forth. So it's very interesting. It also reminds me of the SBF case, where people invested without confirming their investments. They needed to get in. The last one was in. Just as with this, we could have seen major Bitcoin publications or even Forbes reprinting this without verifying it. It can be so easy to push retweet. Moving on to the exit question. What about some...
hang on, I just want to...
Go ahead, Josh.
Just want to say that was Maria Jones, not Victoria Jones. Maria Jones, she was ex-VP, also co-founder, apparently, but no one ever knew, and everyone always said that both Tony Lane and Maria Jones were kind of almost just front masks for like, I don't know, I think out of Russia, maybe I don't know. It all gets very speculative and fake newsy.
It's always been out there for any investigative reporter who's tired of reporting on who is Satoshi Nakamoto for the 500th time. You could always try to figure out who is Cointelegraph. We really don't know. I agree with you, Josh. I remember Maria Jones. She made some incredibly beautiful videos for Cointelegraph, and then met her at a couple of conferences, and then she disappeared like the others. But I hope she's well and so forth. But it's been very strange seeing who runs Cointelegraph. But moving on to the exit question, what about positive Bitcoin news? Where do you get your Bitcoin news? Who do you trust? Victoria Jones, where do you get your Bitcoin news these days? Google, Twitter, Bitcoin Magazine, Coindesk?
Well, I mean, I've been in Bitcoin a while now, and I have a lot of friends in the space. I'm pleased to say, and you know, I'm often in chat groups with them, and so often if there's something that comes up, I'll normally hear it there first. You know, rather than Twitter. I find Twitter can get a bit samey, and then of course there's problems even with, you know, Twitter and YouTube. You know, the censorship. They only seem to allow things like clickbaity things just about the price with Bitcoin, whereas, you know, the philosophy behind it is quite interesting. It's certainly what I'm more interested in, but that doesn't kind of get the viral uptake like, you know, a news post does. So yeah, I mean, I'm much more interested in the philosophy, and so, you know, most of the noise about, you know, as I've already said about the ETF, I'm not too impressed about that. So yeah, I would say I get my news from my friends. You know, getting to know people in the community, I think, really helps, because people who are interested, they'll often see it from a different perspective, and they'll help you see through the noise and help you understand, you know, what the important points are. So I find, for myself, I find that beneficial.
Excellent source of news. It's interesting, the news you get on Twitter. Recently, I seem to be getting all my death notices from Twitter. Like, I didn't know Suzanne Summers was dead, and someone was already like referencing it like it was old news. And I was like, wow, am I behind? Josh Shigala, where do you get your Bitcoin news?
Well, the World Crypto Network, of course, every Friday. Like Victoria said, generally, what I think generally in this world, you know, I got rid of my television a long time ago, and of course I have the internet, but I got rid of Facebook a long time ago, and one of the things I realized was that if something's important enough, then it'll bubble up through my friends and get to me. That I don't need every single tiny headline. But, you know, back in the day when Bitcoin was very new, you could sort of keep track of every project. And now there's no way, of course, there's no way. And the thing is, being in also now, not just Bitcoin, and I'm sorry, but in the Ethereum and the EVM circuits, there's even more happening. There's so much incredible research into cryptography, into ways of decentralizing centralized authorities like exchanges. There's so much happening. And so I really just keep an eye on different groups doing work in the space, you know, builders. I really love to keep an eye on builders, because they're the ones where news comes out from. They're the ones that create news when they release something. So I try to keep an eye on builders, and not just the Cointelegraph and things like that.
All right, a large question, like a downward pointing thumb icon appeared from your mouth, Josh. I don't know what's happening now. There must be some new feature to Zoom. I don't know what it is, some kind of cartoon feature. I'm not sure what's happening. But Dan, Eve, what's your favorite go-to Bitcoin news source? I don't know. Don't do any gestures. Maybe it like picks up on gestures now. I'm not sure what it's doing. We'll see if it shows up.
I still use Twitter/X, but obviously take almost everything with a pinch of salt. double check the usernames, even if it is verified, because there's still tricks that can happen. But just be critical of the source that's saying it, and if there is something that's especially quite a bold claim, then just try and check if other people are saying it and where they got their source from. That's the only way you can kind of do it if you're relying on social media, is to just treble check whatever you're reading, make sure that it sounds rational. Because the crazy, well, then again, since 2020 everything's gone all crazy, right? There's everything is nuts out there at the moment, but you've just got to don't trust, verify, right? There you go. So you find sources that are generally okay, but you still got to check them. And as we've seen again over the last couple of weeks with the crazy stuff going on in the Middle East, there's all sorts flying about from both sides, I must say, of misinformation. Just like there is on anything, right? Whenever there's any agreement or disagreement in two opposing sides, you're going to find disinformation on both sides. You just need to weed out the crap sources and make sure that you are critical of those. But actually, funnily enough, so that tweet, the original tweet from Crypto Coins News, who have changed their names now, it seems, they actually still have the tweet up on there that says, and other people are saying, press release, KNC miner returns with improved mining product for sale, ! And then a little KNC, we are back, shop now. So I wonder how much they paid for that. May 15th, 2017. That's still up. Cointelegraph hid the track straight away. I even said in my tweet, shame on them because they deleted the page. But Crypto Coins News, they are balls on the table, still out there with their fake KNC mining scam.
Well, if it had an exclamation mark, it has to be true. Now, the place I get most of my Bitcoin news is my iPhone. Yes, since Bernie Mac died on 8/9/2008, and I was standing in line for the iPhone, and a rumble went through the line, and everyone was all talking about how Bernie Mac had died. Pretty much every piece of information I've ever gotten has been from my iPhone. I'm not really sure about Bitcoin news anymore. I still I read Google News. I read DuckDuckGo News for Bitcoin. Most of the mainstream media just seems to parrot and puppet various stories about the price, various stories about if you'd bought Bitcoin on this date, this is how much money you'd have, or most of the time not have. So it's very hard to find sources. Coindesk is okay. Bitcoin Magazine's okay. They're a little kind of right-leaning politically and a little radical, really, with their libertarian type coverage and their graphic design and so forth. But they're kind of the best we have. Bitcoin Magazine, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's a lot like the Bitcoin Standard. You don't get to choose who writes about Bitcoin or who the heroes are. You just have to deal with. So I'm gonna agree with Josh. I think the best coverage is right here on the World Crypto Network. Yeah. Moving on, check out the Bitcoin Group 10th anniversary special right here on the World Crypto Network. We had a trip back through time. We watched almost every 50th episode, number 1, number 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350. We're still working our way up to episode 400, but it's been an incredible 10 years here on the Bitcoin Group. Thanks to everybody who's been a guest on the show. Everyone who donated to the show and helped me buy microphones and trips, and brought Chris Ellis out to Washington, D.C. once. And Josh is in here, Tone's in here, Dan, Ben, Martine, everybody's in here. Thanks to Victoria and MK Lords, Davi, Andreas, there's Adam McBride. We've had everybody on the Bitcoin Group, so it's great to have everybody. Adam Meister, all the crew here on the Bitcoin Group. Here's to another 10 years. Moving on to issue 3. Sam Bankman-Fried was a bad friend too. Nisad Singh said he tried to get Bankman-Fried to do the right thing, to lay down on his sword and admit that his company was fraudulent, thus saving all of his friends from having to turn on him and become rats. Instead, Bankman shrugged off the billions of dollars of loss that was obviously stressing out his friend. Nisad told Sam at the penthouse near the pool in the Bahamas about the problem, how there was around $3 billion missing, how they had been misappropriated and using customer funds for pretty much anything they'd wanted since the beginning of the company, which is an incredible reveal. We also learned that they spent around $1 billion so they could meet celebrities and make friends, hiring an influencer group, which allowed them to easily couple up with these loving and willing celebrities who took and accepted the money. Josh Shigala, what do you think about Sam Bankman-Fried, his friend who was his brother's childhood friend, who had known him for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, incredible amount of time, came to him at the pool and said, "We've got a problem. We should shut it down." And Sam didn't do anything. And now his girlfriend, his lifelong friend, and his brother's lifelong friend have all turned state's evidence against him.
Yeah, I remember I had to, I remember I lived very, very far away from my day job for a while there, and like really a long, like 2 hours drive. And eventually you get flashed with enough speeding fines that you have to like go to court, and the court sent me to like a driving school thing. Back to, you must go to driving school. And so I sat there, and one of the lessons learned there was from insurance companies, and insurance companies going through all of the frauds that happen in automotive stuff. You know, because every week there was a different theme. Like one week was a guy in a wheelchair talking how terrible driving without a seatbelt is and all this stuff. Anyway, the insurance, one of the big takeaways from that day was that eventually you get caught because you split up with your wife or you split up with your girlfriend. Your girlfriend will come back even 5 or 6 years later and say to the insurance company out of spite, "This guy lied to you," and then they'll come back and bring you to court and say, "We've got now evidence that you actually misled the insurance claims," and blah, 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 and they sue you. So, you know, I don't want to say that you should mistrust your best friends or your wives or your family, but you should try to do the right thing. And because you will eventually, generally speaking, you will eventually get caught. And so the moral decision shouldn't be, will I get caught or not? It should be, is this the right thing to do? And when it comes to a large scale fraud, of course, what are you doing? Are you going to get caught? You're going to get caught. And by the way, I talked yesterday. We had a Twitter Spaces on the standard Twitter Spaces, and we talked to a bunch of the founder of KyberSwap, or one of the guys from KyberSwap, which is like Uniswap, doing great work in the decentralized exchange space, and they're based in Singapore. And I said, "Do you know anyone?" You know, because we talked about that when Adam Meister was on the show. Does anyone know anyone that lost money? And it was quite interesting because they said, "Well, where are you?" You know, I'm in, and then he said, "I'm in Singapore, and we lost a lot of money because the Singaporean government has a fund of the people who invested in FTX, which basically gave it a green light for retail to say, oh, that's a good investment. I'm going to do the same." So a lot of people in Singapore put their money into FTX as well. And so thinking it was a safe place. And so there are a lot of retail investors. I just wanted to put that out there because we did ask that question, and I got the answer yesterday loud and clear, that depending on where you are in the world, there's absolutely retail investors that lost a lot of money. It wasn't just big VC firms.
Was that via FTT or investing in the actual company entity?
No, I think that was like, oh, okay, the Singapore government have invested in this company, I'm going to use it. So I think they were just depositing into FTX and, you know, using as an exchange.
It's been interesting as this trial goes on to hear the inside workings of the company and how it ran, especially this allow_negative function, which apparently very early on was implemented and allowed SBF and the others to loot the customer accounts. Previously, this function, if not turned off, would have not allowed the accounts to go negative. but it seems it was written very early in the company's history, and that these customer funds were used for anything they wanted early on, which is just shocking. And even more shocking that Michael Lewis didn't revise his book, given the simplicity of these crimes. These are not complicated crypto derivative crimes that involved a lot of planning and timing and scheduling. This is just the money comes in, we take it, and we use it for marketing, we use it for investing at Alameda, we use it for buying the penthouse, whatever else it is. And it's stunning. It's not, it's not if they're adults or their children or whatever. It's like you wouldn't run a lemonade stand this way. This is just
and
it's all part of the trial. It's all factual now. So go ahead, Josh.
And it's part of it's kind of a bull market thing that can happen in bull markets, because money comes in, it's going to grow, you just keep blowing it in whatever, because it's just going to number go up technology. Very sad.
It seems like it was only a couple of days, but it did feel pretty good during the last bull market. I remember talking to Vortex about the market before, and he's like, yeah, we only had a few days. Like, you only had a couple of days to make those smart decisions. But with Sam and these other guys, the money just kept rolling in. They made random crazy decisions with it, and more money rolled in. It's an unbelievable snowball type effect that they were on, where just no matter what they did, because of the way they were set up, because of the lane they were in, whatever it was, they just grew. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Sam? Do you think he's a good friend? Sorry, good, Dan?
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, Sam reminded me, when I look at him, as this sort of nerdy type who maybe got teased a lot in school. And so he has this setting inside of him to want to please people and want to make friends and want to be the nice guy. And in terms of like, oh, look, I'll fund you. Oh, and I won't just fund you with, a few $1,000. I'll fund you with $30 million. And oh, Tom Brady, and trying to get into these pockets of influential people to be the liked guy at the party, by just throwing money around. And I think this is a big part of the story, is this human psychology of the kid that was, paid out a lot and I mean, was teased a lot. And there's that thumbs up. Zoom really agrees with me today. But and then really wanting to sort of compensate from those early childhood traumas by basically buying friends.
Although the pictures he took with Giselle are incredible. I think it's well worth it. I mean, the other ones, Tom Brady, they didn't really sell it, but Giselle loves a picture. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Sam Bankman-Fried? Is he a good friend? He pretty much, like the article is saying, he forced all of his friends to plead guilty and to testify against him in a way by not taking responsibility for the company and taking the fall himself.
Oh, he really is a big meanie, isn't he? After all these things that are coming out, he's really gone from this kind of bumbling.
You loved him, Dan. You were ready to fall.
I'm going to say, I did not love him. I just said he seems like the sort of guy that's kind of down to earth. He did an interview. I must admit, I was taken back by it. The way he played it off, he played people well. It obviously wasn't just me. He did Sequoia and all sorts. Had them, and I'm not an esteemed intelligent investor like those guys. I didn't put any money in and would never go near it with a barge pole. So that's one place I have that up. And I certainly don't have any and didn't use FTX as an exchange, right? So that's kind of a good thing. But as a character, I thought, maybe it's just the kind of nice part or the optimistic part of me that wanted to think that, hey, he's a nice guy that's trying to do good for the earth, but that was actually just all BS, and he's just like a giant meanie. Whether obviously everyone's turned against him, it's the whole prisoner's dilemma, right? That's the thing. It's the prisoner's dilemma. If it's either, well, if you don't give evidence now and testify against them, then you'll be pulled under as well. So we can strike you a plea deal, which I never quite understood. I don't understand even nowadays in any case, and especially where I watch these kind of, as we all do, these kind of murder mystery type stuff, but how that can have so much weight, right? That you can have such a plea, your sentence is reduced so much for doing also seemingly very bad crimes, but just because you're dobbing in on someone. I think that's quite a crazy thing, especially if it's only happening after the fact when you've been discovered. It's not like you're admitting to those crimes, then you're going to the authorities, and then you got caught out. Like, you are only doing this as an act of desperation. Why should you be given such an insane amount of leniency? That's always kind of confused me. And so they're playing this thing where with Ellison, how she was just a young lady that was swept away by Sam's suave, musk about him, or whatever, all these bravado and his his macho-ness and all this, when actually in actual fact
his pros and con list,
the pros and cons list, but in fairness, it was more cons than pros. But that they were a party to all of these decisions all along the way, and it just seems kind of strange that he's the only one that's if I were him, it seems like he could have basically done the same as them and just pleaded guilty and then literally tried to pull them in, so it then becomes a Spider-Man pointing at another Spider-Man sort of thing.
I was thinking that today, Dan. If only there was something that Sam could go rat on. If only there was someone above him in the company where he could rat them out, and then everybody would just be convicted by ratting each other out. But eventually it does come to a point there. It does come to a former president.
Sure.
He's where someone's making the decisions. So.
Yeah, he's the head. But at the same time, it's that. And that I suppose is the ringleader part, right? The ringleader is always the one that goes down, the one that goes down most. But the more that comes out, the more you see that the other people were in on it. It wasn't just a case of, he is evil and he's badass and he's a complete bell, but the other people kind of knew what was going on quite clearly. I mean, this Nishad Singh seems like he was pretty unlucky that he only found out in September and tried to do the right thing. But the other people were pretty complicit with everything that went on. So what will be obviously interesting is what his sentence he gets, but also what the other what the sentences they get, even though they did these plea deals. Because a lot of people did get burnt, as Josh is saying. It burnt, there was when there even investors, it was the same with BlockFi, right? There were governments that had money, that had funds that had that had bought into FTX in some way or used it in some way. So it wasn't retail wise, it probably wasn't as widespread in the rest of the world, but certainly a lot of organizations actually got hit by it, like with the BlockFi scandal.
It's an excellent point, Dan. It's one thing to write into your journal, "Dear diary, Sam is stealing everyone's money and it's so terrible." But it's another thing to go whistleblower and to tell someone,
you're counting your bonus,
your job. Yeah, as you're sleeping on your feather bed in the Bahamas penthouse with the pool and the spa and the masseuse and whatever else.
As I sip this champagne on the balcony, woe is me. I wonder.
Oh, it's so terrible. The customer funds. Oh my, it's awful.
Yeah, some more embezzlement, Sam. Oh, join me in the balcony.
Yeah.
What we needed now is someone to defend Sam. Victoria Jones. SBF was just an alpha male doing his part to be a businessman and take your money. He's just a Ken out there doing his Ken best in the world. What do you think about SBF? Did he really ruin all of his friends?
I don't know. I mean, certainly from reading the article, it seemed that the guy seemed pretty aware of what was going on. So again, it kind of comes back down to this issue of taking responsibility again, doesn't it? It's just like, now that all of it's hitting the fan, it was fine while no one knew about it, and there was some degree of unease because he probably hadn't been part of something that was quite so scandalous up until that point. But clearly now it's a bigger deal, but he seems to be getting away with it. And of course, you have to remember that the whole world was kind of fawning Sam Bankman-Fried at the time. And I think often it's a problem with these companies, especially if they're big and powerful and they have a lot of money and they're being successful. They often surround themselves with yes men. And so this is often where it fails, because no one feels like they can stand up and say no, and he even mentions in the article that at some point it's just, he was criticized for the fact that he was highlighting stuff and was and was effectively told that they had to go along because it was a confidence game. And you can hardly blame them, because Keynesian economics is a confidence game. They're just working within the system that they've got and trying to win like other people are. They're just unlucky that they failed this time. I mean, the whole world is surrounded by corrupt people who've been getting away with it most of the time. I think they just took it too far and hence kind of got caught up in it. So I don't know. I mean, they were all friendly enough in order to organize a business together. I mean, it didn't seem to be a problem then, but of course, now that the chips are on the table, the fingers get pointed and, I mean, it just smells. I mean, they're clearly a group of people with no integrity whatsoever. And as far as I'm concerned, they deserve everything they get.
Let's move on to the exit question. It seems like the trial is going terribly for Sam. Bad evidence everywhere. Bad lawyers asking repetitive questions, pissing off the judge. Just no real hope here. Yet he can still only get a certain amount of years. I don't think they'll send him to the electric chair. Dan, Eve, continue with the predictive streak. How long will SBF spend in prison? I think we're looking about 10 to 15 right now, I think is what the average bet is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going double Theranos, which is currently standing at 9, so 18. But I'm going to say plus 50%. Like so I'm going to go for 2027. Was it? Oh, wait, wait, hang on a sec. My math is really bad. 18. No, that's 27, right? Plus 50%. Because it seems like it was all going on right from the start. And this function of just being able to drain people's accounts, that's pretty damning, right? That's not like it was an accident. That's willfully putting in a function that drains people's accounts, doesn't split the books and keep things separate. So there's lots of really obvious fraud techniques being unearthed now.
Well, and again, we have to highlight that the American legal system does not really have a standard for financial crime. It's not like you steal $1 million, you get 10 years, you steal $1 billion, you get 20 years, as it is with violent crime. If you murder someone or beat someone up, you get X amount of years. And when we start talking about 20, 30 years, that's really only reserved for violent crime. And of course, Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road alleged founder. Victoria Jones, how high can it go? Will we see fuzzy hair in the chair?
Well, I mean, again, going back to that article, I don't hold out much hope for the judge actually understanding what's happened here. I mean, apparently at one point he asked what mining was, because he didn't know what Bitcoin mining was. And, Singh explained that Bitcoin miners were banks of computers solving puzzles in order to get a reward and add a block of transactions to the blockchain. And apparently the judge replied by saying, well, I'm sure that's the best I'm going to get. So, if he's struggling just understanding what mining is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's come across financial crime before, but whether or not, this whole crypto thing is kind of boggling his mind, it wouldn't surprise me. Most of us have been in it for several years now, so we followed all the developments. But, for the average person who doesn't understand the language and understand how he got away with what he got away with,
But I found that technical jargon is not a defense. People generally get more upset at me if I use technical jargon or explain things to them. I think he'd get more years. I think that'd piss the judge off.
Well, yeah, but he's still constrained by what he's allowed to sentence or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, I'll go with what Dan says, probably around that. I think it's a reasonable explanation. But I just had to bring that up because I thought that was really funny. Apparently the whole court laughed when he said that.
Well, there's always hope, as they said in the Fear and Loathing movie. Castration, double castration. Josh Degala, what will be the result of the SBF trial? As Dan has said, we've got Theranos at 9 years. But remember, she got pregnant, had 2 kids, got married, maybe a little less years. She's a woman and so forth. How many years will SBF serve?
Hard to know. I mean, I just don't even know how many Ghislaine Maxwell is serving. So it's kind of vague. But, yeah. Proper goal, 16 years and 56 minutes. It could be.
Very
could be,
precise.
I think.
Very precise.
Very precise. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I really don't know, but it's exciting to watch. It perplexes me that the judge wouldn't know what mining is. That to me is really upsetting, actually, because if I was in the hot seat as Sam is, and the whole world is trying to scapegoat me alone, which I don't think Sam's not guilty, that's for sure. But like the rest of the panel have said, pull out the Woody Harrelson gif of him wiping his tears with money. They're all culpable, and definitely down the chain of command, they all should have something. They should all be on trial. So yeah, I don't know. It's not only Sam. I think the rest of the executive board should at least get something. Sam should definitely get something, but yeah, I think it upsets me that the judge seems to be technically inept when he shouldn't be. He should understand the technology that he's judging on. It upsets me that somehow the world is okay with taking all the blame from every side of this and putting it on one person rather than an organization, which is really what this comes down to. It's a system that failed. Yeah, it might have had a head, which was Sam, but the system underneath Sam it should also be on trial.
It's an excellent point, Josh. I'd like to see some of the investors, not the people that lost money, the people that invested in FTX, the ones who said,
Sequoia.
Kid playing video games in the meetings, and let's just back him. They should bring them in and put them on trial, or at least, at the very least, make them testify and say, why did you invest in this company? Because of their blind investments in this company, it leads to those losses of the normal people. They enable Sam to allegedly pull off a much bigger scam than would have been possible if they had done their due diligence, or if they had said no. There would have been less harm.
Specifically large VCs like Sequoia, because when these VCs invest, other VCs don't do due diligence. They presume that the large lead investor has done their due diligence and they just go in as a follow-on investment. And then you get other VC, and this is how you get this cascade. And you get these scams like that woman who had the blood test, one prick blood test, and it would tell you everything about your blood. She like scammed investors out of billion, a lot of money, and it was the same thing.
She's in for 9 years allegedly.
Yeah.
But,
right, 9 years.
Like
okay.
you guys were saying earlier, the Singaporean government didn't get the idea on its own to invest in FTX. It was these large money investors who had said things like, we already made this much. We already made this much of investment on our own. We are such and such a big firm. You can trust us. And they must have, because that's a government organization, doesn't just follow randomly investing into this curly haired guy's exchange. Somebody has to tell them to.
Right. That's right.
I think Sam's still going to get 10 to 15 years, which isn't worth all the trouble of this trial. He should just take a plea deal and, like we're saying, rat out the U.S. government. It wasn't me. It was the U.S. dollar that did it. It was capitalism. I was framed. Moving on to issue 4. Lightning Labs rolls out Taproot assets to make Bitcoin a multi-asset network. Yes, Taproot assets will give developers the tools they need to make Bitcoin a multi-asset network, but in a scalable manner, according to Lightning Labs. Again, it just sounds like more altcoins, and they're going to bring stable coins to Bitcoin, but I guess it's a good thing because the Bitcoin network theoretically would be more stable than one of the altcoin networks. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Taproot assets? Is it time to get excited yet?
Oh, well, I think the idea of assets, I don't view these other kind of tokens and assets as like a competitor to Bitcoin in any way, because they'll never be Bitcoin, and most of them don't pretend to actually be Bitcoin. They're just shit coins. Or they try and provide some some reason for the utility, but they don't compete with Bitcoin. So I think that something that gives Bitcoin more utility is actually a good thing. I'm not saying Bitcoin is a utility token, but it's not just money. It's basically a clock, right, where you can timestamp things and prove things that are completely irreversible. So there's many other reasons why Bitcoin and the blockchain is used specifically. So I think the idea of assets is quite good. Obviously, a lot of maxis are pretty peeved off, especially putting gooey stable coins on Bitcoin, and stuff like that they don't like, and obviously it paves the way potentially for utility tokens that they also aren't kind of happy with. But at the end of the day, it brings more people to Bitcoin, and it means that the more demand there is for Bitcoin space, the more the hash rate is going to grow, the more it's secure it's going to be, and it's going to make that money more secure as well. And in theory, if with the HODL mentality, the more demand there is for Bitcoin block space, the more demand there is for Bitcoin to pay for the block space, and therefore the more the price will pump because of it. So I can see obviously the Bitcoin block space is pretty sacred. It's a sacred thing. Definitely agree with you guys there, but I don't think that it's. I think there's plenty more things that you can use Bitcoin's blockchain for specifically, and Taproot as well. This is using the technology that was created on Bitcoin and Lightning, right? So it's the same underlying principles of decentralization, whilst not actually it being on a shitcoin. So if a lot of the argument about Ethereum and all these other chains is that they've got a form of centralization and they're not immutable, then people have found a way to use it on Bitcoin that's now immutable. So why not use it? Just because it's a free market, right? Or is it? Ooh, not my Bitcoin, not in my blockchain yard, not in my black yard, the new NIMBYs.
I've got a great idea. We could put Bitcoin on top of Bitcoin.
All right.
It's a way, Homer. I'll give you guys time to think about that. Victoria Jones, we've got Taproot assets. Altcoins are now good because they're on Bitcoin. Stable coins are now stable and safe. Everything has been solved.
Yeah, I mean, I think this argument is definitely testament to the fact that this is a particular point in Bitcoin's development. I don't think this is going to be a long-term strategy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, some of the conversations I've been having recently with people in person, there still seems to be quite a lot of confusion about Bitcoin just being a store of value rather than it actually being a payment network. And I do think that argument is problematic, because if you just use it as a store of value, then you're just using Bitcoin like gold is at the moment, like it's supposed to back the rest of the financial system. But, one of the talks I've been giving recently is pointing out the fact that poverty started to become a real problem when gold went out of circulation. It's not just about the fact that gold is underlying the financial system. When gold actually was used in the economy as a form of payment, that's what kept it honest. They only were able to create quite so much debt once gold wasn't circulating in the economy anymore. And so for that reason, we actually need Bitcoin to work as a payment mechanism. And, to try and fudge that development by having fiat equivalents backed by Bitcoin, it's kind of backwards. It's not really what Bitcoin is designed to do. And there are plenty of other technologies that can do that in the interim. I mean, we need Bitcoin to be Bitcoin, and we need it to be efficient and working as a form of payment, not because we want to necessarily buy coffee with it, because we want to buy coffee with it, but because we need to use it as a form of payment if it's going to actually deliver what it promises. And it needs to be widely adopted. I mean, the reason why there were large drops in poverty during the 1800s is because people were allowed to use it as a form of payment, and also it was used as the medium of exchange throughout the whole of Europe. That's what made it so good, because it reduced the costs of exchanging currencies between countries, because all of their currencies were against a stable amount of gold. But there was a law introduced in 1833 where when they started introducing banknotes into the economy, the banks were required to actually provide the gold if someone brought that banknote into the bank. And so, the moment something happened to change the value of those banknotes, people would question it straight away, like, hang on, what's going on here? But once gold was actually taken out of circulation, that was the point at which, no one could tell anymore. And that's the point at which we started to get all the debt that we've got at the moment. And so, there are a lot of really important understandings that you need about how money works to understand, the direction in which Bitcoin should really be developed. And I've not seen many people talk about it, which is one of the reasons why I've been bringing it up in my talks. I mean, I actually did one in Surrey earlier this week and I actually got a good recording of it. So I'm going to be publishing that on Sunday. But I really do think that, people need to bear these points in mind when they're developing these technologies, because otherwise you're putting a lot of effort into something that's only needed temporarily. And it's not really what Bitcoin's for. We should be using the energy and the motivation for what we need Bitcoin for, not these other projects. That's just my opinion.
It does seem like we've gone a long way from Satoshi's vision. Like there was a game of telephone and he was like, I have a dream that will recreate all of the traditional financial networks on Bitcoin, derivatives and spot ETFs and all these things, when really I don't think he had that dream. Josh Shigala, what do you think? They've got stable coins on Bitcoin now. I don't know what makes it stable, maybe just because they say so. But it's very exciting. We're going to have all the assets. It's going to be great.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the Taproot actually allows for a lot more. It's part of scalability. It's allows the alleviation of network congestion in a way, slightly, because of the way it deals with cryptographic proofs. And having we always had other assets on Bitcoin, by the way. We had colored coins, which allowed you to create a coin and follow it around the network by coloring it in, which then made them non-fungible. But you couldn't use those on Lightning Network due to the way that Lightning Network works in a relay way. So just like you have a race where someone is passing a baton and someone else grabs the baton and then runs the next 100 meters and then passes the baton. And let's say in that race, you don't know who was the person that is passing the baton, who they got the baton from. And so it's very, very hard to pass non-fungible tokens around in that mechanism. So this sort of fixes that. The problem is when they market it towards stable coins, it's awful, because Satoshi was like, there's a fractional reserve system where banks can print as much as they want out of thin air and issue value, so-called value, as debt. And we don't need to keep any value in the bank. We could just print it. And Satoshi thinking, I'm going to create rare numbers where there is only 21 million provably, and this stores value. Now we've gone full, that's a 180 thinking, 180 degree thinking from the legacy system. And then now the whole industry is like, we need to go another 180 back to 360 where we can get the bank's money, which is in fractional reserve, and tokenize the so-called amount of money that they have on the account, which is, obviously a fraud because there isn't that much money. It's all in fractional reserve, and tokenize it and say, now we have this on-chain, this lie of a number on-chain as well, and give it value. Now, this is why we built the standard, by not to sit here and shield the standard, but this is one of the reasons why we built the standard.io is that if you build a stable coin, because stability is really useful, it's super useful. But if you just use the banking system and tokenize their crap numbers, which are an absolute fraud, then you're just repeating the same thing over again. And now we're building the crap system on a better system to make it crap again. So rather than that, we built the standard where people can lock up funds from anywhere around the world. Thousands of people lock up funds into smart contracts they control and issue debt from that. And that's interesting. And that's the kind of thing I would love to see on Bitcoin. Because if I could have built the standard.io on Bitcoin, I absolutely would have, but I still can't. And I'm still waiting for the day where we can have more Turing complete smart contracts running on Bitcoin.
Well, and I do think, Josh, that your guys' idea over at the standard is a better idea than what they're floating here. They're going to make another stable coin, but like you're saying, they're going to link it to a bank account. They're going to link it to the existing system. They're going to recreate the problem. Whereas if you could link it to an actual asset that we know is limited, that we know is controlled, we're actually creating a new system. We're trying something different, which I think would be more interesting. At least we could get the results on that.
Yep.
But we're running out of time, so we're going to go to predictions or story of the week. Dan, Eve, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I'll go for a prediction, and based on the fact that Luke Deshier got all upset about his node being tricked into hosting BRC20 tokens. Essentially, I'm going to predict that somebody is going to trick poor Luke Deshier's full node into hosting their shitcoin via Taproot and Lightning. So they're going to infiltrate his node and trick it into having a shitcoin on there. So
tough times ahead for Luke Deshier's node.
Is it
really tough time?
You said
it's Dashier, but it's spelled with a JR in it, so it's confusing to everyone.
It looks like it should be Dash Jr.
I don't know that he ever speaks anywhere, so I've never met him. But that Luke
I have
called that. All right, Victoria Jones, you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Oh, well, my story of the week, I've been pretty busy. I've realized that, in the last 5 months, I've traveled to 5 different countries, and 2 of those I was talking to conferences about Bitcoin and CBDCs. And I also did that in Surrey this week, and I've done it in other locations in the UK. So I'm getting quite busy doing these in-person talks, which is really nice because, of course, I get to talk to people in person and discuss the issues. But I finally got a good recording of the talk, which I'm in the process of editing. And so hopefully that'll be published on my YouTube channel on Sunday. So you can look out for that.
All right, very good. It's great to be traveling. It's also nice to be home. I just want to, again, celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Bitcoin group. If you guys want to go back, we have a playlist. You could go watch all the old Bitcoin group episodes. There's Andreas, Davi, Derek, everybody that's been on the show. It's been really fun. 10 years went by really fast. Look there, I look young. Something anyway. At least we have video of that. So you guys can check it out. We've also got all the old comments, all the old chats are all there. You guys can check it out. And then someday, some poor intern or some graduate student's going to have to watch all this. So let's give some pity to that guy or gal out in the future with all this video. Of course, by then they'll just use an AI and they'll have the AI summarize it. So it won't matter.
That must have been a special occasion because I was wearing a suit jacket there, right? So that was like a 300 episode or something, was it?
I'm sure it was number 300. Wow. And I talked you up into the suit jacket. Look how nice that looks. Look at that. That is classy. That is a free gravitas. All you have to do is wear a suit.
Oh, geez.
So that's what Stephen Colbert used to say that back in the day, Colbert. But we're running out of time. So thanks to everyone for joining us. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.